Welcome to Eviliv3, the live media commentary show that answers the question, was Franklin truly the despot he was famed to be? Subscribe if you're new to the channel, because today we are reviewing the complete autobiography by Benjamin Franklin. About him because it's an autobiography. This was actually compiled by Mark Skousen, and I actually listened to the audiobook because I don't have time to read anymore. My new job is like completely taken over my free time. But because it is a half an hour away, I get an hour every day to listen to audiobooks, which is pretty awesome. And because I listen to them on 1.5 speed, or sometimes 2, depending on the story and whether or not I need to be actively paying super close attention to details or whether I'm just getting broad strokes, sometimes you can get it done a little bit faster and get the gist of stuff. The other part of this is that I'm not sure which channel, because I have a number of channels, this should be on. My personal channel is about professional stuff and hobbies and stuff like that. And so it probably doesn't belong there. This probably does very much belong here, especially because I have a lot of political content on here from the past, my past podcasts. And, well, it just kind of makes sense that a founding father's autobiography would probably fit in line with that. Because I do think there were some decidedly satanic aspects of Benjamin Franklin, of which we might talk about a couple of them. Okay, so the reality of the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin was it wasn't very long. It was a very, very short, succinct tale, and it was unfinished. Ultimately, he just kind of got tired of writing it. So he started in 1771, and it ended in 1790, and he has continually referenced works and written letters to and from other individuals for correspondence and just to keep up, because of course there was no social media back then. That's right. Can you imagine? There was no email back then. You had to write letters, and the act of writing and receiving letters was a very important thing. It's literally the only way to keep in touch with anyone at that point. What I loved about this story, this autobiography, was that you really got a sense of who the elder statesman of Benjamin Franklin was through his own perspective. Now, this version, there's the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, which is pretty short, but then the complete version actually takes that original work and then compiles a bunch of his memoirs and letters and even his last will and testament at the very end, and puts it all into this one volume. And a lot of stuff was stripped away to try to create this seamless narrative, which it doesn't do a very good job of doing, if I'm being honest. And that's really the downfall, because ultimately when I'm thinking about an autobiography, I want to know the story arc, right? How you became a statesman. What was it about you that led you down this path? And then how did you see your successes and failures and experience life? And, in the twilight of your years, what did you do? So this had a lot of that sort of meat and potatoes aspect of his life that everyone is interested in, as the founding father, Benjamin Franklin, dealing with the idea of a democracy, dealing with and one really interesting part of this was his recollections of talking with the powers that be in England about the American colonies and trying to explain to the British that you cannot have extra taxes on imports and exports from the American colonies when they're already paying import-export taxes and they have no representation in your government. The American colonies will not accept that. So if you do this, just know that it could end very badly. And I suspect it'll end very badly for you. Benjamin Franklin is saying this straight up. And the British loved him, and they took his opinion and they considered it. But the truth is that Britain thought that the American colonies owed them, and that they could levy any tax on them that they wanted. And who cares if they didn't like it, because we're Britain. We do what we want, right? I just loved the back and forth, and it does go into considerable detail, and especially about Benjamin Franklin's reflections of the American colonies, how he felt about the fledgling democracy, how he feared that American democracy could quickly quickly fall into another monarchy again, which, if we're being honest with ourselves, we're not far from that now. MAGA country 100% would be okay with a monarchy of Trump because they're fucking morons. But that's just my opinion, and the rest of reality's opinion, which is obscure, especially in America, where we pride ourselves supposedly by our Constitution. And having the reflections of Benjamin Franklin's concerns about the Constitution and seeing where we are now, it is an interesting juxtaposition because his fears, it took hundreds of years to get there, are actually starting to be realized now, about what he was afraid could happen if we were not vigilant in our fight for democracy. I found it poignant. I found it very, very intriguing, and just on the nose. All right, so ultimately, this was published. The audio version was published by Blackstone Audio Inc., and it was narrated by Richard Ferrone. My argument with him is if you're reading memoirs in a book, then you can sort of mentally stop. Okay, this is one memoir, stop. Now, let me go to the next. And this is a whole other memoir. But when you're listening to it, he just bounces between pages. And so you don't know where one ends and one begins. You have to contextually be listening. And because there's no stop and pace, it's hard for you to sort of catch yourself. And you do actively listen to this stuff because you're interested, but at some points it just feels like he's railroading through it to do a job of reading this audiobook, and instead of presenting the best version of reading of the audiobook, and that becomes frustrating as well. I really liked how Benjamin Franklin talked about just being at that cusp of history. Not just of, and how wonderfully he bloviated over this focus and sensational love he had for science and academics and learning. He went through and actually started the American education system. There wasn't anything, and he actually started it. That whole "don't tread on me," he came up with that. It was his idea to have the snake be the noble creature represented of America. And when he found out that they had voted on the bald eagle, he was pissed because he hated the bald eagle. And he goes through aspects of the animals in order to explain why the snake was such a better representation of America, and the bald eagle was a horrible representation of America. And I rounded the corner. I had never considered it before, but after hearing his arguments, they're very persuasive, and I completely agree at this point, if I'm being honest. Oh, here, you're looking at my disgusting ass office / son's room. Now we can hide part of it. So that's some of the aspects of this that I really appreciated, was his individual contributions, not just to science, academia, and the formation of the nation and the way that the American experiment should move forward, but also his reflections on how it could go poorly. And what you learn is that this is, we as Americans, we tend to sensationalize. We tend to worship the founding fathers as if they were larger than life. They weren't men. They were not quite gods. We tend to think of them as like superheroes almost. And it's very strange because these were very flawed human beings with very flawed ideas, and they just happened to be able to come together when it seemed like they shouldn't ever be able to come together and do this thing, create this experiment, and won the war against all odds against Britain, and won their independence, and then tried their best to hold it together when they really, for all intents and purposes, shouldn't have been able to, but they did. And another sort of gripe I have about this is that it doesn't go in enough about the Revolutionary War. It sort of glosses over it because he spent most of his time over in France for a good reason. He was building up relations and stuff. And he talks about how much he adores France. And again, this is him in his later years. And so you're hearing about how he has suffered from gout, how he suffered from, what are they called? The bladder gallstones, like they go through your urethra and they hurt painfully. So he had one that he never passed, and he would bleed when he peed, and he just suffered. And we used barbells and stuff for exercise, but sometimes he couldn't even walk. He was stuck in bed. He was known to read and play chess nude, which do your thing, man. It was not like he was like a fit dude, so, so it was just like back then, I guess you just accepted it. The quirks of the individual. I always heard that he was a philanderer, and there's no indication that he actually was in this at all. And I understand it's an autobiography, but why would he lie? He did write some what could be perceived as salacious letters back and forth to this female friend of his back in France over the years, and they had talked about what they would have liked to have done together or experienced together or shared together, but that they never actually did. And I think it's because they were older. And that's just the reality of it. Your body doesn't work the same as when you were 20. You don't have a raging heart on every second of the day when you're an old ass man, sitting in bed because you hurt from gout. I could imagine how that would hinder you from your sex life. And so I don't think he was actually the philanderer that his reputation and his detractors claimed that he was. Though he didn't have a great relationship with his wife because she refused to sail over to France with him, absolutely just rejected the idea. He was an amazing businessman because he believed in saving. He believed in not overexerting yourself and living within your means, something that I've always believed as well. And it's nice to just see a reflection in someone that you've always sort of admired from a distance, hundreds of years distance, and mythology distance, that they are the same way. And there's 13 virtues that I wanted to go through that were presented in this. So first and foremost, temperance. Eat not to dullness, drink not to elation. Moderation in all things. Very satanic perspective. Indulgence, not compulsion. Right? So the next one is silence. Speak not but what may benefit others or yourself. Avoid trifling conversation. And I love this because he wasn't one to talk shit about people. He had and he hated the newspapers in America and in England because that's all they did was talk shit about people. And that really bothered him. The whole institution of the media bothered him because all it was just like petty schoolyard bullying. On a sort of a national scale. Well, national then. Order. Let all your things have their places. Let each part of your business have its time. And that's that you have to live in an ordered environment in order to be successful and professional. And if you're living in disarray, then you can never really focus on anything. And you need to really focus every item has its place. And if you have an ordered space, then you are more successful and more put together and ready to deal with the duties of the day. And I'm the exact same way. I mean, you wouldn't be able to tell by the state of this damn room I'm in. But, all my son's junk aside, like I have to have things ordered in a certain way. And everything has to be put together. If you look at my desk in my office at work, it's Spartan. And it is completely clean and completely just everything where it needs to be. I don't like disorder. The next one is resolution. Resolve to perform what you ought, perform without fail what you resolve. So it's just complete the tasks that you set upon yourself and don't fall into that pattern of, tomorrow, I'll get it done tomorrow. He has that famous saying, don't put off tomorrow what you can do today. Of course. And of course, earlier, the whole talking about where is it? Oh, well, we'll get to it next here. Frugality. Make no expense but to do good to others or yourself. Waste nothing. Be frugal. Frugality. Um, I really like this idea too, because ultimately what he's talking about is don't overextend yourself, not with your relationships, not with anything. And for fuck's sake, don't waste anything. He has this really great saying when he's talking about, oh man, I don't remember the exact phrasing of it. I should have written it down because it was brilliant. But basically, the idea was that you're wasting time and you're wasting your energy and you got nowhere for it. It cost too much to do the thing that you're trying to do because you wasted too much time. And time is money. Effort is money. Communication is money. And if you extend yourself and overextend your finances, then it costs you too much in the long run and you can't actually recoup that cost. So it goes to that whole idea of a penny saved is a penny earned. Industry is the next one. Lose no time. Be always employed in something useful. Cut off all unnecessary actions. If you stop dilly-dallying, now here's something that we have to consider, because on the surface it looks like he's a workaholic. But I would focus the unnecessary actions phrase and say, what do you consider necessary in life and unnecessary in life? Because that's really what it comes down to. I believe that having time with the family to play games or to talk or to laugh is incredibly important. I think that spending time in my yard, taking care of it, and being a part of my total environment is a valuable expenditure of time. And so that is not an unnecessary action to me. What's unnecessary is overindulgence, is spending time with friends where you're literally just like hanging out doing nothing, not enjoying each other's company in discussion or experience, but just lollygagging or talking shit about someone. Like stuff like that I have no patience for and I have no interest in. I would rather indulge in those I'm around or in my own total environment. And maybe the indulgence is in the form of reading a book or sharing a review. And I find that very valuable, and I find it very necessary because it allows me to process when sometimes I don't necessarily process how I think or feel unless I am presenting a view to another friend or to you, the blank audience. You know what I mean? Okay, so the next is sincerity. Use no hurtful deceit. Think innocently and justly, and if you speak, speak accordingly. I think this is fair, and I do believe it's very in line with do not complain about that which you need not subject yourself, a sort of a rule of the earth. The reality is you need to police yourself and be the best version of yourself. He takes it in a very sort of holistic, religious way, even though he wasn't a very religious man, to my shock. He actually didn't like organized religion at all, even though he did believe in a supreme God, as most of the founding fathers did, because that was the prevalent belief of the time. I think if he existed nowadays, I think he would very much be an atheist, without a doubt. But because the culture of the time, the Victorian ethics dictated that that's how people thought, then that's just how they interpreted their own ideas of reality. Justice. Wrong none by doing injuries or omitting the benefits that are your duty. Don't screw people over and do what you say you're going to do. This is just what I was taught to be a man. Your word meant something. If you said you were going to do something, you did it to the best of your ability. And if you fucked up, you would apologize and you corrected that fuck up. That's just being a man 101, as I was raised. Moderation. Avoid extremes. Forbear resenting injuries so much as you think they deserve. He was someone that did indulge lightly, but he never overindulged, at least not according to him or his friends. At the end of his life, he didn't indulge at all in things like overeating or drinking, because his health was very poor and he was in a lot of pain most of the time. Cleanliness. Tolerate no uncleanliness in body, clothes, or habitation. I love it. I love this. Again, this goes with one of the earlier principles, virtues of everything being in order. If it's in order, it's easier to maintain cleanliness. And sweet hell, people, why are we not taking care of ourselves? You know, there's nothing worse to me than walking next to someone and they're just like drenched in old sweat and they just smell their breath. They clearly don't take care of their teeth, their oral hygiene, and they don't run a comb through their hair. Like stuff like that really gets to me. And it tells me a lot about you as an individual, how lazy you are. And it lets me know, and maybe it's a good thing because it lets me know I want nothing to do with you. You're not the quality of human that I deserve in my life. So get the fuck away. It's a nice line, you know, to understand without saying anything. Tranquility. Be not disturbed at trifles or at accidents common or unavoidable. And this is something where, look, we're all human. We're all going to make mistakes, and we're all going to have accidents and error. And that's okay. Accept it. Don't beat yourself up about it, and don't beat other people up about it. Acknowledge that it happened and then correct it. And that's it. Don't over-examine it. Don't use it to judge them later on in life or yourself later on in life. Just move forward, because the reality is nothing in life is perfect. Nothing. Not this union, not ourselves, not nature, not the cosmos. Nothing is perfect. It is all random chaos and happenstance and mistake. So let's not over focus on what we can just move beyond. Chastity. Rarely use venery, but for health or offspring, never to dullness, weakness, or the injury of your own or another's peace or reputation. Well, stuff like that is obvious. You know, don't fucking rape and sexually, physically assault people, of course. But rarely use venery, but for health or offspring? Come on. Indulgence, not compulsion, is how I see it. As long as it's two consenting adults, that's all you need. Humility. Imitate Jesus and Socrates. You know, if you look at the historically presented Jesus, he was a rebel. He challenged conventions, and Socrates was a philosopher. And so if you want to pick pieces of those, you know, from a historical standpoint and apply them to your life, then by all means, you know, do whatever you got to do. I tend to like the idea of the devil because, again, he is the ultimate rebel. And there's, of course, a lot of other statements that are associated with him that I, you know, not just identify with, but personify in my very existence. So I wouldn't necessarily take Jesus as an example, but I'm not going to fault someone who would, because that's not me, and I don't care. Do what you want. As long as your choices do not hinder or harm me, then have at it. Do your thing, man. So, I really loved these 13 virtues that Benjamin Franklin noted. I really enjoyed reading this and hearing his reflections on the nation and experience and business. I thought it was very interesting that his son sided with Britain instead of with his father and with the new nation of America, and how that was never really resolved. I don't remember him even being included in the will at the end. I think his son reached out and wanted to mend the relationship, but I think Benjamin Franklin really held it, and it hurt him, and he held on to that pain. And he was like, "Look, you turned against me when I needed you most. When this great experiment, which he saw literally as manifest destiny, because there's no reason why they should have beat the British. They were outgunned, outnumbered, outpeopled. There's just no reason that he saw that we could have won that independence war, and yet we did. And yet we did. So he believed that it was very much a God stepping in and being active in human affairs and assisting America to find its freedom. He believed that. I don't believe that. But I'm not going to fault him for his beliefs. He's dead, you know? I mean, it's already done. And he was instrumental in that success. And, you know, the form of the reality that we all exist in today. He was an instrumental part of shaping that. He was around when inventions of light and sound were coming out and communications. And it was so interesting hearing his interpretation of these wonderful inventions at the time that to us are rudimentary, but you know, at the time were revolutionary. And I really, really appreciate the perspective that I gained from him in his own words about life, about business, about patriotism, and everything. So if you want to envision a forefather as a human being and not as a deity, as a demigod, as it were, or a superhero, I would highly recommend you check this out. You'll learn something. You'll find nuggets of wisdom that you will then move and take into your own life and move forward through your life with and respect them. And you will, it's like that saying, there's only people who are fans of Johnny Cash and people who will become fans of Johnny Cash. That's very much the same thing with Benjamin Franklin, in my opinion. There are people who idolize him as a human being and as a forefather, and there are those who will learn to idolize him because he is just one of those qualities of human that while you may not agree with everything they do or say, you cannot disagree that they are of significance in the scale of human existence. And there are so few humans, really, when you think about our numbers, that are of significance that we should learn about and appreciate those who are, because it can help us be better and become individuals of significance, if to no one else than but ourselves. And that's the most important thing, right? So, all right. So ultimately, I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 evil eyes. It would have been 5 if he would have spent more time on the Revolutionary War, but he wasn't here for most of it, so I can't fault him for that. I just wanted more of his thoughts about it because that's the huge moment in history that should not have ever succeeded. And I just want to live in that moment a little bit longer. So I'm going to have to read some other memoirs to really get there and really get the perspectives of everyone that was involved in it. And I'm very much looking forward to doing so. So 4 out of 5 evil eyes ain't bad. And, you know, part of that also is the audiobook, the individual presenting the audiobook. I just felt like he could have done a little bit better. That's all. But ultimately, it's definitely worth a read. Do yourselves a favor. Pick up the complete... I can't remember. The Completed Autobiography by Benjamin Franklin. You will not be disappointed. And you can get it at a library for free, audiobook or physical book, or the digital book. So do yourselves a favor. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, like it or not, remember that evil spelled backwards is live. So get out there and be evil.